What is up, everybody? I'm back with the milk doing part 2 of the mock commercial oral Checkride, right? Today we're going pretty in depth into airworthiness. So yeah, it's a long one, bear with me. Just a quick response to everybody that did like, comment, and subscribe. Number one, thank you guys for doing that. And number two, go back and read the comments to get some context. Life's busy. I got my commercial check ride coming up. It's finally got a date on it. I didn't specify that I had a date on it before, but now I do. It's June 14th, just a couple days away. And what else? I finished up my AA at Mount Sac, and I got my job. So this is all for you guys. Everybody that was screaming and shouting in the comments, I heard you. I made this video. This is for you. So I hope you enjoy it. Go ahead, like, comment, subscribe again. I appreciate it, actually. So yeah, let's get into it. Thank you guys. Have a good one. Woo-wee, some good coffee. Took me a week or so to brew. All right, are you ready to get into what are we doing this week? Airworthiness requirements. Is the Pope Catholic? Alrighty then. Let's go ahead and define airworthy.
Well, a plane is airworthy if it conforms to its original type design or properly altered state and is in a condition for safe flight.
Specifically, what goes into keeping an airplane airworthy?
Proper documents on board, inspections complied with, instruments and equipment either operating or properly deactivated and placarded inoperative.
Nice job. Okay, so who is primarily responsible for maintaining an aircraft in airworthy condition?
That would be the owner-operator.
Who is responsible for maintaining proper maintenance records of the airplane?
That would also be the owner-operator.
Say you get a ramp check following a flight, and the inspector discovers that a required inspection was not completed. Who is primarily responsible and why?
That's the PIC. The PIC is responsible for determining that the plane is airworthy and safe before flights.
What aircraft documents must be on board when the plane is being operated?
The required documents would be the airworthiness certificate, the registration certificate, the radio station license if you're flying outside of the United States, the POH, and the operating limitations it contains, such as the placards, current weight and balance and equipment list, compass deviation card, avionics cockpit reference guide for each aircraft depending on the type of avionics installed, the MEL if the plane has one, and a special flight permit only when it's required. Some might add that the external data plate is required. It's definitely required, not really a document though.
Nice job. Okay, so is the maintenance binder required on board?
No, the maintenance binder isn't required on board, not per the regs.
Do the regs require airworthiness certificate or registration certificate, or both, to be visible to occupants?
Just the airworthiness certificate.
Okay, where are these certs displayed in your aircraft?
For the Cessna 172, it's in the front pocket by the pilot seat.
All right. For how long is an airworthiness certificate valid?
It's valid for as long as the aircraft is in a airworthy condition and remains registered in the United States.
Are airworthiness certificates only valid for their specific tail numbers, or can they be used for any tail number of the same make and model of airplane?
It would be just that one tail number.
Nice. What needs to occur before an airplane can receive its airworthiness certificate?
A representative from the FAA will inspect the airplane to ensure that it meets all the regulatory requirements and is in condition for safe operation.
Do registration certificates expire?
Yes,
How often?
every 36 calendar months.
Our plane's registration certificate says it was issued on January 8th of 2013 and expires on January 31st of 2022. How does that square with registrations expiring every 36 months?
The registration doesn't list every renewal date, only the original issuance of the date and then the next expiration date.
Is the registration the FAA statement of who owns the title to the plane?
No, it only says as much as right on the certificate.
Other than expiring, what else would cause the registration to no longer be valid?
It would no longer be valid if it was registered in another foreign country, The registration was canceled upon request of the certificate holder. The aircraft is totally destroyed or scrapped. The ownership is transferred, or the certificate holder loses U.S. citizenship. And lastly, the 30 days have elapsed since the death of the holder of the certificate.
For how long are temporary registration certificates valid?
They're valid for 90 days.
And how do you know that it's temporary?
It says so on the registration certificate. The older ones are pink.
Are there any limitations associated with the temporary restrictions?
Well, because the plane isn't fully registered, they are valid for domestic flights only.
How would you go about registering your plane?
I'd go online to the application on FAA.gov or get a paper application from the FSDO.
What aircraft document becomes required only when flying outside of the United States?
That'd be your radio station license.
Is this document for the plane, the pilot, or both?
The radio station license is required for the plane, and the radio operator's permit is required for the pilot.
How would a pilot intend to fly internationally get one of these?
Just go to fcc.gov.
Do you have to pass a test first?
No, just fill in some basic info and then pay a fee.
Where do you find these lists of placards required to be in the airplane or on the airplane?
That'd be in the back of the limitation sections of the POH, section 2.
If your airplane doesn't have a POH AFM inside, could you use one from another airplane as long as it's the same make and model?
No.
How do you know that you are using the correct POH AFM for your airplane?
I'd either match the tail number in the POH with the airplane's tail number, or match the serial number to the external data plate with the serial number that's in the POH.
Does every section of the POH need to be in the airplane when it's being operated, or technically just the limitations section?
It would be the full POH.
Let's say during your pre-flight you see that the POH is in the baggage compartment. Why is that a problem?
The POH must be accessible to the crew during flight.
Nice job. Okay, so which weight and balance is required to be on board? The weight and balance form we fill out prior to each flight, or the official/current weight and balance in the POH?
It'd be the weight and balance in the POH.
What section of the POH typically contains the official weight and balance?
That would be section 6.
What section of the POH contains the equipment list?
That'd also be section 6.
Where does the requirement to have the weight and balance and equipment list on board come from?
That comes from section 8 of the POH.
Under what circumstances must an airplane's official weight and balance be amended? For instance, if new, heavier avionics get installed, does the official weight and balance need to be updated?
Yeah, any new weight and balance that's considered not to be negligible must be accounted for on the weight and balance.
What is negligible weight change?
Negligible would be considered 1 pound or less if the airplane's empty weight is less than 5,000 pounds.
If an aircraft has an MEL, does the MEL need to be carried on board every time the plane is operated?
Yes.
Is each MEL only valid for one airplane?
Yes, just like the POH.
If some instrument or piece of equipment becomes inoperative during flight, should you consult the MEL?
No, the minimum equipment lists are not intended to be used in flight. For in-flight issues, use the checklist and the POH.
Nice, okay. Where do you look to determine which avionics guide needs to be in the airplane?
Section 8 or Section 9 of the POH, it could be in the KOEL as well.
Where must the avionics guide be stowed on the airplane?
It'd be with the POH, it just must be accessible to the crew.
All right, what are the required maintenance inspections and how often must they be completed?
All the maintenance inspections we can remember from our acronym Aviate. We got our A, B, I, A, T, E. So we have our annual / ADs. These are as specified, and this is 12 calendar months. Our VOR check every 30 days. We have our altimeter / pitot static system. That's every 24 calendar months. We have our 100-hour inspections. That is if you're flying for hire. and you can switch out your 100-hour inspection for an annual, but you can't switch out your annual for a 100-hour inspection. You have your transponder. That's got to be checked every 24 calendar months. You have your ELT. That is every 12 calendar months. 1 hour of use, or 50% of the battery's life. You can remember that by using the 1 to 1.5 station.
Very good. Nice job. Which inspections are only required for IFR flights?
Those would be the VOR and the pedostatic system inspections.
What about the transponder inspection? In the maintenance binder, is it usually listed on the same page as the other IFR inspections?
It's usually completed at the same time as the IFR inspections, but technically it's required for VFR operations as well.
Would the VOR check need to be current if you were going to do local instrument training practicing instrument approaches under VFR?
It's not legally required, but ensuring the VORs are current and operating properly would show good ADM. Anytime that you're using them, it's good practice to ensure that they're working properly and that they've been checked within the previous 30 days.
What is an airworthiness directive?
Airworthiness directives are legally enforceable regulations issued by the FAA to correct an unsafe condition in a product. They're similar to car recalls.
Now, what FAR part establishes the FAA's authority to release and enforce ADs?
That would be part 39.
What are the categories of ADs, and describe them for me?
We got 2 categories. One would be emergency category, and the other would be less than urgent. The former requires compliance prior to flight, whereas the latter must be complied within specific timeframes. You can subdivide those 2 basic types of ADs into a one-time, recurring, and conditional ADs.
And what is a conditional AD?
An AD that becomes active only under certain conditions, for example, an AD that is only required after a prop strike.
Who's responsible for complying with an AD?
That'd be the owner-operator.
Are AD compliance records required to be kept?
Yeah.
What records specifically?
I'd refer to Part 91, 417. This regulation requires a record to be maintained that shows the current status of applicable ADs, including the method of compliance, the AD's number and revision date. If recurring, the next due date and time, the signature, type of certificate, and certificate number of the repair station or mechanic who performed that work.
Show me how you verified that all your aircraft's ADs have been complied with. Not every flight school has such easily accessible maintenance logs. If you were to rent a plane from an FBO, say, how could you verify that the ADs were in compliance?
I would Google FAA.gov ADs and search for the make and model of the plane I'd be flying. This brings up all the relevant ADs, and then I'd ask the owner if I could review the maintenance records and confirm that those ADs have been properly complied with.
What is the Special Airworthiness Information Bulletin, and how is it different from an AD?
The FAA issues a SAIB as an informational tool to alert, educate, and make recommendations to the aviation community about ways to improve the safety of a product. It's different from an AD in that it contains non-regulatory, non-mandated information, guidance for safety issues that do not meet the criteria of an airworthiness directive. So action under Part 39. Sometimes SAIBs eventually become ADs though.
Is compliance with an SAIB mandatory?
No, they're just advisory.
What is a service bulletin, and how is it different from an AD?
Service Bulletin SB is a notice from a manufacturer informing the owner-operator of a product improvement. Alert service bulletins are issued when safety is affected. Service bulletins, unlike ADs, are non-regulatory. They are just issued by the product or aircraft manufacturer, not by the FAA, and therefore they are not mandatory in a legal sense. However, if an alert SB is accompanied by an AD, it becomes mandatory.
Is compliance with an SB mandatory?
Only if accompanied by an AD.
Other than the time frames, is there a difference between the annual and the 100-hour inspections?
Well, in terms of what must be inspected, no, there's no difference. The only difference concerns who can conduct the annual and approve the airplane for return to service afterwards. An AMP with an inspection authorization, aka an IA, AMPs without their IAs can conduct the 100-hour inspections.
Okay. If an annual was completed on January 1st of 2020, when is its next due date?
It's be due January 31st of 2021.
Say that on January 31st, 2021, you fly the plane to some airport and it ends up getting stuck there overnight due to weather. How do you get the plane back to its base for maintenance, seeing as more than 12 calendar months had now passed since the last annual?
I'd get a special flight permit.
How?
Through the local FSDO or from a designated airworthiness representative.
If you had been carrying passengers, could they fly back with you?
Unfortunately not.
How about the rest of your crew?
If they're required crew members, then yes.
Other than overflying an annual, what are some other scenarios that would require a special flight permit?
Flying an aircraft to a point for repairs, alterations, maintenance, and such, or storage. Delivering new aircraft to the base of the purchaser or to storage point. Conducting production flight tests, evacuating an aircraft from an impending danger, such as a hurricane, conducting customer demonstration flights in new production aircraft that have passed or completed production flight tests, excess weight operations.
Other than required crew only, what are some other typical limitations on special flight permits?
Day VMC conditions only. Flight must be direct, valid for only one flight. No overflight of congested areas. Mechanic must first inspect the airplane and certify safe for flight. ADs must be in compliance.
All right. Now let's say that you bought a plane and flew it only recreationally. Is a 100-hour inspection required?
Thankfully, no.
What type of operations require a 100-hour inspection?
When flying non-crew passengers for hire, as well as when giving flight instruction in an aircraft provided by the instructor.
Let's say that you rent a plane from a local FBO. You and a fellow student friend are going to go fly around and practice some landings and maneuvers. You examine the maintenance logs and find that the plane did not have a 100-hour or annual inspection within the previous 100 hours. Can you fly it?
Yes, I have not been hired for this flight. This particular flight is not a for-hire operation, nor am I providing flight instruction in a plane that I'm providing.
What if your friend is a photographer and he's going to pay you to fly him around the city so that he can take some local aerial shots? Can you fly without the 100-hour?
No, now I'm for hire and carrying a passenger.
My plane needs a 100-hour inspection, but it's currently at 98 hours and the repair station is a 5-hour flight away. Can I fly the plane to the station for maintenance?
Yeah, you can overfly a 100-hour by up to 10 hours.
It's an early model Cessna 172 with small tanks. I need to make a fuel stop. Is that permitted?
Yeah.
If this is a brand new plane, and this is the plane's very first inspection, and the inspection ends up being performed at 103 hours, when will the next 100-hour be due?
That would be at 200 hours.
What should you verify before overflying a 100-hour inspection for maintenance?
Verify that you won't be overflying in the 80.
If the plane had an annual inspection within the previous 100 hours, would that have substituted or counted for the 100-hour?
Yeah.
Conversely, does a 100-hour count in place of the annual?
No.
What information must be included in inspection maintenance log entries? For example, what specifically are you verifying when you review the binder entries?
I'd be reviewing the type of inspection and a brief description of the extent of the inspection, the date of the inspection and the aircraft total time in service, the signature and certificate number, and the kind of certificate held by the person approving or disapproving for return to service of the aircraft, airframe, aircraft engine, propeller, appliance, or component part, or portions thereof, as well as if the aircraft is found to be airworthy and approved for return to service, the following or similarly worded statement. I certify this aircraft has been inspected in accordance with inspection and was determined to be in airworthy condition.
How often must an ELT be inspected?
That'd be every 12 calendar months.
How often must the ELT battery be replaced or recharged?
Every 1 hour of cumulative use or when the half-life has been reached.
Who establishes the half-life date?
That'd be the manufacturer.
Where is this listed?
It's on the ELT itself or in the maintenance log.
Under what circumstances can the plane be operated without an ELT?
These exceptions are listed under Part 91 207F. Two examples, one would be training operations within 50 nautical miles, as well as when the ELT has been removed for maintenance, or as long as it's within 90 days of the removal date.
If the 121.5 ELT must be tested, when should this test be conducted so as not to confuse ATC and or other aircraft?
That'd be the first 5 minutes of every hour and no more than 3 sweeps.
Where is the ELT located in the airplane and why?
It's towards the back of the tail cone. The regs require this as the tail cone generally receives the least amount of damage in the event of a crash.
What causes the ELT to sound and how do you know it's been activated?
Rapid deceleration, such as a crash or an extremely hard landing. Also, the pilot can manually activate it with the switch. Once activated, you'll hear a loud auroral tone in the cabin, and the red light on the ELT switch will blink.
Are non-mechanics allowed to conduct any type of maintenance on the airplane?
Yes, but only preventative maintenance. The maintenance must be performed by a pilot with at least a private pilot certificate.
As a private pilot, could you perform preventative maintenance on a friend's plane that you don't intend to fly?
No, preventative maintenance must be performed by the operator or owner of the aircraft.
What is the definition of preventative maintenance?
Simple or minor preservation operations and the replacement of small standard parts, not involving complex assembly operations.
So if I determine that the maintenance fits the definition, as long as I'm at least a private pilot, I can do the maintenance?
No, the maintenance needs to be specified on the list of preventative maintenance in Part 43, Appendix A, Paragraph C. Anything that's not on that list, it's not preventative maintenance.
I don't see add oil or add air to tires on that list. Does that mean only mechanics should be able to do those tasks?
No, adding oil and adding air to tires is considered general or basic upkeep, like washing the windshield.
Just because a particular preventative maintenance task is listed in Appendix A, and therefore, as a private or commercial pilot, you are legally permitted to do it yourself, should you?
No, not unless I've received some degree of training and feel confident performing the maintenance task properly.
Is a maintenance entry log required after performing preventative maintenance?
Yeah.
What info must be included?
Well, per Part 43.9, the description of the work, the date of completion, the name of the person performing the work, signature, cert number, and the kind of certificate held by the person proving the work.
Okay, what is a master minimum equipment list?
An MMEL is a generic basis from the point where the owner-operator develops the MEL for his or her specific tail number. The MMEL originally created by the manufacturer in conjunction with the FAA for a specific type of aircraft. It contains a list of items of instruments and equipment that may be inoperative on a type of aircraft.
What is a minimum equipment list?
An MEL minimum equipment list is a tail number specific document listing instrument, equipment, and procedures that allow the aircraft to be operated under specific conditions with inoperative equipment.
If you were the owner operator, how would you go about obtaining an MEL for your airplane?
I would schedule an appointment with the FSDO. During the appointment, an FAA inspector will provide me an MMEL and ensure that I understand the MEL operations and procedures, including how to create an OM procedure document. Once that it is determined that I have an appropriate understanding of this information, The inspector and I will both sign the LOA, which goes in the MEL. And then I am my own to create the tail number specific OM procedures and operate the airplane in accordance with the MEL. The MEL is now considered a supplemental type certificate.
Can you create an MEL that is more restrictive than the MMEL?
Yeah.
How about less restrictive?
No.
What 4 parts comprise an MEL?
That would be the MMEL, the preamble, the letter of authorization, and the procedure documents.
What do the O and the M signify?
The O indicates that the specific operations procedures must be accomplished before continuing the flight with the list items of equipment inoperative. Normally, the flight crew accomplishes these O procedures, and M indicates that a specific maintenance procedure must be accomplished before beginning operation with the listed item of equipment inoperative.
Say a position light is inoperative, how would you use the MEL in this case?
I'd look up the position light in the OM procedures section of the MEL.
What if the in-op instrument or equipment isn't listed on the MEL?
And I can't fly.
What is meant by repair interval categories?
Each letter A through D represents a period of time in which the inoperative equipment must be repaired. These categories do not apply to the Part 91 aircraft.
Does the MEL need to be on board when the plane is being operated?
Yeah,
Is an MEL tail number specific or type specific?
the tail number specific.
What if the inoperative equipment is required by 91205? Would you still refer to your plane's MEL?
Yeah,
If the plane is sold, does the MEL transfer with the plane?
no.
Other than the legal requirement, why is it important to always placard deactivated instruments and equipment inoperative?
It's a reminder not to rely on the inoperative item. Also, it serves as a warning to other flight crews using the aircraft that might otherwise not be aware that the equipment is inoperative.
What is a supplemental type certificate?
An STC, it's a change in a type design, not great enough to require a new application for a new type certificate. An example would be the installation of a power plant different from what was included in the original type certificate.
Specifically, when is a STC required?
It's typically required for major alterations to the aircraft or systems, provided that the alteration is not covered by AC 4313-2.
Awesome, you killed that, man. I think it's time to make some more coffee.
Whew. Oh yeah, I could go for a breather.